So with a lot of things shaking up before the NBA gets into their national TV deals, we're going to get insight to what's going on with their local TV deals, which is pretty much falling apart as we've seen Discovery completely get out of that business overall. And one of the NBA's largest partners for their local TV deals, Bally Sports, aka Diamond Sports, has filed for bankruptcy, which has caused teams like the Utah Jazz, the Phoenix Suns to kind of pivot away from those local deals and kind of form their own networks. Some of the NBA teams have even collaborated with baseball teams like the Houston Rockets and also the Portland Trail Blazers. But Rob Thunn of DirecTV acknowledged what Adam Silver said about the generational shift.
And I don't think millennials watch sports to the same degree. They certainly don't watch TV to the same degree. We didn't grow up with TikTok, but that's a phenomenon that people like to watch, and it gets a lot of eyeballs. So people have the time is really the measurement that's shared across all these things, and they spend their time in different things than just linear TV. And if we price linear TV too expensively, you're almost forcing their hand to go watch it in spend their time with their eyeballs doing different things than watching pay TV.
And the local TV deals are the first ones to suffer because of this, mainly. A lot of people in those local markets have opted out of those plans. And about 15 of these NBA teams could swallow this loss for now until that national TV deal kicks in. But Rob Thunn of DirecTV also acknowledged how some of their partners have now become their competitors. As a lot of entities like the NBA, the NFL, they do offer direct-to-consumer packages. So it's changing the way the money is being made and how much money is being made. And the inflated price of a lot of these sports packages is being reflected onto the consumer. And now customers are just leaving because pretty much they've begun to realize that they're priced out.
And unfortunately, the economics seem to keep going up and up. And that's driven us into the problem of the declining pay TV business because the entry-level price of our packages are too high for customers. And they've decided to sort of tap out of pay TV and look to cobble together their own experiences. And it's unfortunate that we're at this place, but that's where we are. We want to know where the content itself resides, what we're competing with against the programmer itself, who used to not be a competitor. They were just a supplier. Now they're a supplier and a competitor. So what are the rights digitally, and what do we get, and what are they trying to keep for themselves, and how do we square that? I mean, I think what you saw in the Charter Disney deal, which was, I think, a watershed deal for the industry, is that, and we were out here fighting the same thing years ago. We were trying to get it such that whatever the D2C product was, the direct consumer product was, of a particular programmer, that our customers who are already getting most of those channels and that content through their subscription to us would have free access to their direct consumer product. And we were out there first to try to get that what we call the don't pay twice principle. And we got coupons effectively for customers who wanted to subscribe to those direct consumer products from the likes of Discovery Plus, from the likes of AMC Plus, Paramount Plus, Peacock, where we got a 40% off coupon for our customers. Charter got a 100% off coupon, and they're plugging in those D2C products as part of the subscription now into their subscription for Spectrum. That was an important move, and in order to make room for that, they also culled out a lot of what I'd call longer tail channels or secondary or tertiary channels of the particular portfolios of these programmers that don't get a lot of viewership. They're really just jammed into deals to get money out of distributors. The price of pay TV has gotten too high. They're hobbies for these programming shops that don't throw off a lot of cash anyway. Those should go away, and we should retrench the programming into the channels that they have that are the flagship channels.
That's the main thing that's actually inflating the price. It's almost like ESPN having their main channel, but having the NBA Finals on ABC. Then they force a company like DirecTV to carry that package with ABC. You see what they're doing? There's a lot of companies that do that. MTV does that with MTV2. You know, even with news networks, C-SPAN and C-SPAN 2. It seems like the bundling was an old way networks used to kind of finesse the large cable companies, but now it's not working anymore because the audience is pretty much begins to tune out, and there's a lot more options than there ever was before with social media and also streaming services.
And too often I'm seeing the same bit of content ported across multiple channels of a particular portfolio. You see Monday Night Football that used to be exclusively in ESPN going to ABC. You see, the Manning cast as it relates to that as well. So ESPN2, ESPN, ABC are all getting effectively the same game with different variations of it. Not to pick on ESPN and Disney, they're not alone. You see a lot of duplicate broadcasts across portfolios, and we don't need to pay twice for that kind of stuff. The shell game of programming cost needs to end, and we need to get more rationalized pricing so that we keep more customers in the pay TV ecosystem. And if we don't, then the programmers who are going to go direct to consumer and lose customers from us now have to, if we lose one customer, every one of the major programming shops needs to pick up that subscription for that customer with their D2C products. And we know that's not going to happen. It just isn't. So it's kind of crazy that we've gotten to this point, and it doesn't seem like logic prevailed.
And that right there is the cable companies acknowledging a lot of these entities like the NFL, the NBA, ESPN, they cannot survive on direct to consumer. More than about 60 to 70% of their whole business is funded by them. So going the direct to consumer route is actually not going to be as lucrative as going through the national cable companies.
How program deals were done, but here we are, and now we have to try to re-rationalize this. And I think the Charter Disney deal was a good first step in towards reconstituting how these deals are done in a way that are most advantageous for customers.
And the Charter Disney battle was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call to a lot of the programmers. Like, hey, this free bundling money that you were getting, where people just wasn't watching ESPN but still was paying that large package fee, those free money days are over. And the biggest thing that came out of that battle was Charter actually saying that, hey, Disney, we're no longer subsidizing holding your packages anymore. We actually could tell our customers to subscribe directly to your product or other subscription services. The cable companies have begun to push back and admit that it's more lucrative for them just to have internet-only customers. So a pushback like that is going to have a trickle-down effect going into other negotiations. But Rob Thun also elaborated on how the RSN business got here and how networks like ESPN got way too expensive to maintain, and they're not going to be a good business model going forward, especially due to the fact that the TV bubble is beginning to burst.
Why we even got here with Diamond Sports and RSNs in general is because the model was broken. The rights just kept going up and up and up, and the actual viewership or the demand for these local sports, while there are some that engage very heavily in watching their local teams, the lion's share of people do not watch RSNs, at least on our dial. And I think it's fairly common across all the other distributors. It's the same concern that the prices didn't match the viewership, and so we're overpaying for these rights, and they need to be re-rationalized. And
we're seeing this play out in Major League Baseball also with the Diamondbacks and the Padres. Shit, the Diamondbacks are in the World Series, but yet, just like how Rob said earlier, the demand does not match up with the pricing.
Folks like Dish dropped out of the RSN business. You have new digital players that are scaling up that don't carry these networks because they aren't efficient. They're too cost intensive, like YouTube and Hulu, except for the NBC portfolio, which were leveraged as part of those overall NBC deals. So there was no way for Hulu or YouTube to avoid that carriage. But where they were just dealing with straight conversations with DSG, or they were dealing them with all these other independent RSNs, they just simply said no thanks. And so to then say, well, here's the way we're going to do it now, we're going to move it to broadcast and let them try to impose their leverage into the negotiations to force carriage. I think we're going to see a replay of this down the road because the broadcast stations are also too expensive, and they've been asking for crazy increases over the years, and we're hitting a point where do the broadcast channels make sense? And we saw this movie already. Sinclair broadcaster who owned DSG wasn't able to use their leverage to put the RSNs into the Dish deal, which then started to unravel the whole business model. I think we're going to see more broadcast fights if the broadcasters are going to try to assume these rights and then impose them upon us. We had a pretty lengthy fight with Nexstar this summer. We're off with two station groups, White Knight and Mission. It's over a year now that we haven't carried the stations of those particular companies that are owned by Nexstar. You have Dish, who is currently off with Hearst, Cox, White Knight, and Mission. And you saw Comcast jump in the fray to a smaller network group. So the broadcast model isn't the silver bullet of answers, either from an economic future long-term basis, or certainly full delivery to all the fans out there, given the limitations of what I just talked about. So I see warning signals for broadcasters jumping in here.
Now, Diamond Sports is one of the NBA's biggest local TV partners, and that bankruptcy kind of left a lot of teams in flux on how they were going to get their games distributed, as we've seen it play out with the Utah Jazz, Phoenix Suns, Portland Trail Blazers, and the Houston Rockets, as some of those franchises have collaborated with baseball teams to create their own networks and their own direct-to-consumer product. And even an interesting team like the Phoenix Suns, if you live down in Arizona and you got an antenna, you could watch their games for free. So the local TV business has really begun to pop, and that has a lot to do with the national TV deals. It's sort of a trickle-down effect. If there's a bubble up top, some of that trickled down to the bottom. And as we see how it's playing out now, a lot of those local deals were definitely inflated. And like Rob Thun has said earlier, the demand has to somewhat meet the price, and it has to be lucrative for all parties involved. And he hints at the possibility that the NBA needs to approach some of these larger cable networks similar to the way Major League Baseball did.
Well, it sort of went to what I was saying earlier, that we do want to continue to carry local sports where it makes sense. And we worked a deal with them where we would continue to carry them and distribute them where we originally did. There are no pockets where customers weren't going to get access to it. But there's a recognition that the rights have to be modulated and fixed to some degree. And so we stepped in and said, look, we'll be a distributor for you and ensure that we get the games to our customers and that we will pay you for those rights. We're still waiting for the rebates from Diamond to make those payments for those two particular teams. But, we support local sports if we can figure out the model to be adjusted in a way where the demand matches the economics. And currently, where we have to over distribute to customers who don't even subscribe to the packages that have the RSNs, and that's part of our problem.
Yeah, so they're forcing even your grandmother to buy these big expensive packages when she don't even watch sports at all. She just needs a basic package, but the basic package includes all these sports networks at inflated prices. That's how they pretty much give it to most customers at a decent price. Even the customer that wants a sports package, the price that they see, even though, to a lot of people that's pretty high to begin with, but it would even be higher if they couldn't force Grandma Annie that's down the block, if they didn't force her to get a basic package with at least some sports channels. So that price would definitely even be higher. But with all this influx, especially on the local TV side, players like DirecTV and just other cable companies are going to be looking to lock the NBA into these local deals for a much longer period of time, which is something the NBA probably does not want to do. Once again, these cable companies are playing their position. They're putting the NBA in a rock and a hard place. It's not like they could say no, and it's not like they could say yes. They got to compromise at some point. The NBA might not be able to fully use their leverage as being one of the only live television products that have value. It's pretty much sports right now is the only live television product that's really valuable to most of these cable companies or just networks to get views and to apply the old business model of just running a bunch of ads and commercial breaks. But let's see what Rob had to say about the possible approach with the NBA.
We're very anxious to see where this all goes because it's very unclear. We're sitting here today and we're having conversations with the NBA because they're not sure what's going to happen with Diamond. And so what contingencies have to be in place if the rug gets pulled out from underneath the teams and they go back to the NBA? Can we be the conduit to distribute the teams in the same fashion as we do today? And the answer is we're working on that. What that deal ultimately looks like, we'd have to then figure out, and it has to go into that same kind of mathematical equation that we have to pay less for the local rights and have it match the demand of the package that they currently reside in. But sure, I mean, where the local rights go, it keeps me up at night as to what we need to do and where that, and not knowing what the answer is going to be as fluid as it is. it has a lot of people up at night as to what we do here, and not just me, probably other people in my chair and other distribution shops. We can be a stopgap, whether a short term or a longer term. We'd like to see a longer term model with the leagues in play, but not every one of them is going to want to go there. And so, unfortunately, what used to be housed in a nice basket of more uniform distribution of RSNs is going to splinter out, and you're going to have certain markets like in Phoenix where you've got broadcasters delivering to the teams and a league delivering the other team. And for those fans who like all three teams, you're going to need a secret decoder ring to know where they all now went. And imagine then being someone working in a call center of ours trying to explain to customers who don't know where the games have gone, in this market it's this, in this market is X, this market it's Y, et cetera, permeate that across all the different markets in the country and the different teams. That's a hard thing to communicate to customers, and it's not going to be clean or tidy in any way.
And it sounds like from what the NBA wants, it's not going to be clean either way, because if they collaborate with the tech companies, it will be that confusing for a lot of fans to just figure out where some of these games are, as it is for the NFL with that Thursday night football and other leagues like the MLS and NHL. But this situation is a bit of a clusterfuck because the NBA is going to throw a monkey wrench and ask a lot of these networks to actually make their products more available and not behind a cable TV paywall. That's the conundrum right there. But it'd be very interesting to see if the NBA could actually use their full leverage on these networks and get the highest price possible without destroying their TV partners, because their partners are definitely beginning to navigate in a new landscape on how this money is going to be made. But we're definitely seeing all the players jock for position as we see the NBA making policies to make sure that star players show up for certain nationally televised games. We're seeing distributors like DirecTV ask for longer local TV network deals. And we're seeing networks like ESPN/Disney in the battle with Charter kind of figure out where they're going to fall in this new whole business structure. There's definitely a lot of moving parts, but we'll see how it plays out.